The game starts by teasing you with little bits of what will shortly be introduced to you as the greatest cutscene you have ever witnessed on a video game. Oh, here goes EA here to drop all this newfound love for street racing we all had after the success of the first Fast and the Furious movie. Then, oh, was that an Eclipse racing someone? Then the big sound and THX lands on the screen. Oh, now it's time to party. Another cutscene snippet. Yep, definitely an Eclipse. Maybe a Supra? Oh, those are like my favorite cars at the moment. Though, they still are, if I'm being honest. Then a pause for safety, as it's rather important in most cases. With Mark DeVellis telling you that he only drives like a madman on the track, but off it he's a granny going to Sunday brunch. But what he really is here to say is the line they wrote for him. If you have the need for speed, just play Underground. Oh my god, he said it. As a 13-year-old me, I'm speechless. Then right after that bomb was dropped on me, boom, they send in the nuke, and it's in the form of a bone stock Eclipse that starts driving and swapping the engine parts, slowly getting to cosmetic stuff like body kits and spoilers. Though I'm a little salty that it shows stereo equipment being swapped in, which I will, many hours later, find out that isn't a thing and won't be until Underground 2, but I digress. Also, I'm certain that the song choice was made because it uses the word shift in it fairly early on, though it does vibe quite well with the scene, which carries on with this hectic street race between the Eclipse and the Supra, ending with the Supra chickening out at the end with the raised bridge that the Eclipse flies over to win the race. Masterpiece. Then the title screen appears and Lil Jon's Get Low starts to play. I'm in awe. This is exactly what I wanted at the time. But the fact is, it's now 2021, and that's where this review begins. For my replay of this game, I chose to play it on the PS2 hooked up to an old CRT TV. I feel retro games should be enjoyed as they were originally for a proper review. With that being said, I think the gameplay looks great visually for its time, and the cutscenes look fantastic. Though not quite the live action scenes that we got from 2015 Need for Speed. The car lineup is exactly what we needed for an underground street racing game, with most of the hard hitters including the Nissan Skyline, Toyota Supra, Mazda RX-7, or the Mitsubishi Eclipse, just to name a few. We also got some more run-of-the-mill cars to start off with, like the Dodge Neon and the Honda Civic. But aside from the Neon and the Ford Focus, you could have any car as long as it was a tuner import car. However, the best part of the game, or rather the reason why anyone started playing the game, was to customize your favorite tuner with body kits, rims, and neon lights. To do this, you play through 113 races that are broken up into different styles. There is a story, of course, but I won't bore you with the details. Circuit races are your normal 3 to 7 laps around a set track, or in this case, sets of streets with predetermined boundaries. I consider anything 5 to 7 laps as an endurance race, though I don't think that was ever mentioned in the game. Another variation of circuit races were lap knockouts, where every lap the person in last is eliminated. Sprint races will have you driving from point A to point B and are sometimes used for time trials as well. Same rules, just racing the clock instead of other racers. Drag racing is mostly straight line streets with the focus being shifted to, well, shifting, and dodging cars with one-tap controls, giving this a very different feel than the rest of the racing. Also included was possibly my favorite part of the game, drifting. Drifting focuses on score to win, as you are alone on the track. To get a good score, you need to be fast and you need to stay sideways. Then there are the occasional tournaments, which are usually 3 to 4 races of the same kind in a row using a point system, so you don't have to come in first every time. You just have to have the most points in the end. With all that said, you would think there would be plenty to break up the monotony. However, in my opinion, it's not quite enough. It seems to me that there are really only maybe 5 different tracks for each different race style, and that's probably being generous. Sprint tracks are just recycled circuit track parts put together, which actually makes me believe it might be one large track that's separated into a few smaller tracks. It's broken up by having you play some tracks in reverse or certain parts that are open or closed to push you in a different part of what was otherwise the same race you just did. Sometimes you will run into a fork in the road where one way is clearly shorter. However, they almost always come with a downside, usually in the form of a jump, which, if not lined up properly, you will end up crashing, or at least swerving enough to slow you down rather than helping you catch up or keep the lead. Which brings me to my next point. The game can be rather unforgiving if you get behind. I really found that if you didn't stay in the lead or could at least see your opponent in front of you, you were too far behind and you couldn't catch up. I felt that at the very least, easy races should have a better catch-up system, or make me feel a little more invincible than I do. Personally, easy mode only felt easier on drag and drift races, which I happen to be pretty decent at by comparison, so it didn't really help. Here in 2021, remasters and remakes are abundant these days, and it's hard not to at least think about what I would want out of a remaster. For starters, let's all thank the gaming gods for modern load and save times. I know, I could have turned off autosave and kept this to a minimum, but autosave's now complete in the background of most games, and this game would just move a lot quicker with that one simple change. But obviously, load and save times are not the real issues I have with this title. My first real complaint is the HUD. While I'm very pleased with the tachometer change for drag race and the scoreboard and extra angle gauge for drift racing, there's way too much going on in a sprint or circuit race on screen that could be tightened up into a minimap and an info box. With an obvious graphical boost, we would want to see more of the vivid streets of the underground to feel more immersed in the world rather than immersed in all this info. Personally, I would like to move the minimap to the top left and all other info on the right. Lap counter could be smaller and not even needed on a sprint. Like, lap 1 of 1? Really? Is that even necessary to have taking up space? Also, I think it's nice to show everyone's score on a drift race, but on a sprint or circuit, I really only need to know my own position. When you complete a race, the first choice to progress should be continue, while restart should only be at the top if you lost. I would rather unlock one thing every race if it meant that it seemed like the progression system moved faster. Like maybe one visual and one performance part each race, or at least alternate, rather than grouping similar items into levels and taking 3 to 5 races to unlock. Also, I think smaller things like headlights and taillights should be some of the first things you unlock instead of almost halfway through the game. I mean, Race 62 was the first taillight unlock. The magazine covers is a forgettable experience on this Need for Speed. I think mostly because of the lack of involvement in it. It just makes a cover with your car on it. And I mean, if you could at least pose your car like you would see later in Underground 2, it may add enough to make it feel more special and less like a long, unnecessary load or save screen. Which brings me to my next point with the loads of unnecessary licensing. I understand that this was potential advertising and whatnot, but I don't need to see Virgin Mobile, DC Shoes, or McDonald's sign when I'm driving around. Also, when choosing new parts for your rides, since brand doesn't affect performance, why do I need to decide? I say this because usually a game like this is stuck in the past because of licensing issues, especially racing games, because cars and music usually hold things up enough already. Speaking of, the soundtrack is a great fit. Many hype songs that make you want to keep that pedal to the floor. With everything from the Crystal Method and Asian Dub Foundation, to Rob Zombie and Static X, to P. Pablo, Nate Dogg, Lil Jon, and T.I., this soundtrack had a little something for everyone. Or, if you're like me, you discovered many new songs that you fell in love with because you heard them over and over while racing the streets. I also love that you could toggle the songs on and off or change where you heard them to tailor the soundtrack to your liking. Lastly, I have some tips and tricks for the road. For my playthrough, I found the Mazda Miata to stay ahead of the rest in performance up until you unlock the Skyline. However, I felt the Skyline drives way different than most cars, feeling tighter to me, but not in a way that I enjoyed racing with. The Eclipse felt the most balanced for me, but I also think that I'm biased as this is my favorite car. I did find a small glitch that is purely aesthetic, which is when you're choosing rims for your car, certain rims are certain sizes. However, if you choose the rims on a bigger car like a Skyline, You can change your car to something smaller like the Eclipse, and voila, bigger rims. And there you have it. It's an all around good game for its time, though replaying Underground did feel like a chore at times from its lack of different areas or always hitting that one spot. But what it did do was excel at making me feel like this car that I was racing with was really mine, with all this customization at my disposal. If you grew up playing this game and still enjoy modern racing games, this one won't let you down too much. Maybe my opinion will change when I decide to replay Underground 2, but for now, this relic is going back in the vault as an overall good racing game.